All right, we're back. Graveyard Shift Movie Podcast, episode number 133. This week, no Child's Play. So instead, I watched a movie called No Escape Room from 2018. That it turned out, I don't know what channel it was made for, but it's a made for TV movie. And I learned that because in the middle of watching it, it would just go to black as if there was supposed to be a commercial break. And boy, they really did it in the middle of some tense moments where I was like, okay. And it would just take me out of the immersion of the movie, if you will. Besides the commercial breaks, though, I'm gonna give this movie a 4. I was gonna give it a 5 because it's not good, but it wasn't bad. But the ending I thought was terrible. Like, there's so many things that they just didn't address or wrap up, and it almost felt like it was the first episode of a new like series on Netflix or something. Like there was supposed to be more after that, but there wasn't. Um, yeah, so I think I'm gonna stick with a 4. I was looking at some other opinions on like IMDb, like other ratings, and some people were giving this like 2s and 1s. I don't think it's worthy of that. I think it's almost fine, but the acting's not great. There's one moment in particular that it gets almost really bad, but it is what it is. But like I said, the ending really, like, as it was happening, I accidentally, like, I don't remember if I paused it or what happened, but somehow the time came up, like the runtime for the movie, and it said 2 minutes, and I went, wait a minute, but there's so much more than the, and then yeah, sure enough, that was the ending. So I was like, well, fuck me, what do I know? But anyway, No Escape Room from 2018. If you've never seen it, it's on Netflix, so be prepared. I'm gonna ruin everything about it. So you've been warned. The movie starts off with, I guess you could call them our main characters, who we had Karen, who's the daughter, which is probably how I'll be addressing her as for the most part in this movie. And then you have her dad. I can't tell you what his name is right now. Maybe it's written down later, but right now I have no idea what his name is. But they're driving, and she's got like headphones on, and she's texting her friends, and it turns out that like her dad only gets her one weekend out of the month. So there's like a divorce relationship or something going on there. They never go specifically more into it, so you never really learn. But he spends that trying to get her to, trying to bond with her. So he takes her like horseback riding a lot because that's something she likes to do. But when they got to the ranch after driving 3.5 hours, I think it was, the ranch is closed. So they're like, well, shit, what are we going to do now? So he's trying to make conversation with her. He's asking her how school's going, how did that paper you were writing turn out? But she's like just completely blowing him off, and she's having none of it. Of course, as they're in the middle of doing this, their car suddenly breaks down. It just magically it hits a pothole, and all of a sudden the engine's smoking and all that good stuff. They break down on the side of the road, and the dad like asks the girl if she can give him a rag to like wipe some oil or some gunk off the engine, something. But she brings it over to him, and she hands it to him, and then she's busy texting on her phone, so she almost steps straight back into the road when a semi truck is passing. So the dad has to like grab her by the arm and yank her over to get her out of the way. And of course she's like, what are you doing? And he's like, I just saved you. And she's like, you didn't, nothing was gonna happen. But yeah, so he stops her from getting hit by a semi. We didn't have a pet cemetery on our hand or just walk out in front of the shit and get creamed. They stop, or they don't stop. They get a lift to a diner, where the dad he's like, well, we wasted the day. I want to do something, so we get some enjoyment out of the day. So he picks up the paper and he starts looking for like fun stuff to do. And he's going through and he's like, movies, the mall, all this stuff. And finally he comes to an escape room and he tells the daughter, he's like, oh, I know you've been wanting to do one of these. Why don't we go, do one? And the daughter's like, oh, you could, you can tell that she wants to, but she's trying not to like act excited about it. So the dad calls over the waitress at this diner and asks them how do they get there. And the waitress immediately is like, oh, you don't want to go there. People don't come back when they go over there, And this goes on for like 2 minutes of her like, with this ominous speech about, people keep going missing up there and you'll never come back and you need to stay away from there and stuff. And finally, at the end, she cracks up laughing. And she's like, I'm just playing. Y'all go up there, have yourself a good time. Tell them Betsy sent you. And they're like, all right, we will do it. And for a second, I was wondering if we were going to get, like, Texas Chainsawed, where it turned out Betsy was in on, like, the murders or whatever was happening. At this point, you don't know what the plot's going to be. But something's going to happen at the escape room. So they're like, sure, we're going to go to the escape room. So the dad goes outside to like call another lift. And the daughter goes into the bathroom. When she's in there, she opens up her purse and she takes out this necklace that the dad had mentioned earlier when they're in the car. He got it for her birthday. I don't know if it was the last one or the year before. But he got her this necklace, and according to her, she really liked it, but she wasn't wearing it. And the dad was like, oh, why aren't you wearing your necklace? And she's like, oh, she just kind of sighs. So she takes it out, and she looks at it, and there's a second where it looks like she's about to put it on, but then she hears a noise from the stall behind her, and she's like, oh, what is that? So you get this tense, like, slow creep over to the stall. And then it was just Betsy, like, taking a shit in the stall. And she comes out and she's like, oh, I stunk up the place. That might not have happened, but Betsy might have come out of the stall. I inferred what was taking place behind that closed door. So, take what you will out of that sentence. But anyway, so she's like, oh, it must have been nothing. And then the dad calls her and, she heads out for the escape room. They get dropped off at this place, and it's just like a mansion in the middle of nowhere, and there's no cars in sight. And they knock on the door, and it just like ominously creeps open, and they're just like, oh, let's go in. And they don't care. They just walk straight in. They don't care. They're looking around the place, and all of a sudden, this creepy bitch pops up behind them, and we're introduced to Josie is her name. And she's like, oh, you guys are just in time. And she's asking, she's like, why are you guys so confused to see me? And she makes them, or she's like, follow me. And they just do, because at this point they're like, oh, this must be like a haunted mansion themed escape room, so they just follow her. And I mean, to be fair, it does seem like she works here, because she leads them into a room where 3 other people are sitting. There's, God, what was the woman's name? I'll look at, there's this lady and her boyfriend Tyler, who the lady is like an escape room expert and she loves doing this stuff. And Tyler just goes along with her because, this is what she likes to do. And then there's this like buff meathead looking dude who I can't remember his name either, but he's here by himself. And the dad asks him, he's like, oh, why are you here by yourself? And he's like, I work here. I'm on the payroll or whatever. And he's like, really? And he's like, no, why the fuck would I tell you that? And the daughter kind of snickers, and the dad's like, I don't like this, Apparently the meathead's name is Andrew in the movie, and the girl who's the escape room expert is Melaine, I guess. Sure, why not? I didn't have any better names. The dad's name is Michael, apparently, too. So anyway, yeah, everyone gets acquainted in this room. Josie comes back in and tells them all, oh, I need your cell phones, and and she makes him sign these contracts in case anything happens to him. You know, the escape room isn't liable. She brings out these teas that are like smoking. And at first, the dad is like, oh, I don't know if we should drink that. And then Melaine is like back there just sipping on it immediately. And she's like, chai tea with a little smoke. So they just start sipping on this tea and they sign these contracts. And once this is all done, Josie starts the game and she like hits a button and all these, or no, she just goes over and pulls down all these wood slats over the windows and makes the room all dark. And she pulls out this projector and starts playing this video that's all just like the, you know, your usual like creepy lady footage of surgeries, like spiders, you know, and all flashing. And she tells them this story about the inventor is his name, and he was obsessed with talking to the dead and reaching the other side, and he did, you know, experiments here, and you know, finally one day he went missing and they don't know where he is. And she tells them all that they have an hour to escape the mansion or the madness that's in this place will consume them. And then the projector goes out, and when the lights come back on, Josie is gone, and the game is started. I thought maybe I misunderstood her, and they had an hour in each room, because they end up having multiple rooms. But no, it just ends up they have an hour for everything. But each room, you know, there's a clock that's constantly counting down and stuff. So they have to get out of the whole mansion in an hour. So after that, everyone gets up and they go into their next room, and the door shuts behind them and locks, and their time starts, and they're officially in the first room. In here, we get more of like Karen, the daughter, kind of being all horned up and, you know, and hitting on Andrew and trying to flirt with him. And Andrew, you know, I'm not going to say he's like flirting back, but he's definitely playing with her, you know. And they're in the middle of like a conversation, and then the dad just like legit awkwardly just slides himself in the middle of them, and he's like, boy, this sure is fun, you know. And this just immediately, you know, the daughter kind of rolls her eyes and walks away and shit, you know. They look around this room for a while, and eventually Karen finds a vinyl from some shitty band that she says is her favorite band. And Andrew's like, oh, well, we gotta play it now, you know. So they take it over to this record player, and they put it on, but I guess it's like, it was just a sleeve of the band she liked, because it's a different vinyl in there than what the sleeve advertises. And this one is just like a woman, like, keeps reciting the same couple of lines over and over again. And after a while, they realize that she's talking about, like, oh, the snake is by the river, and the monkey is in the tree, and the dog is in the, you know, and there's these masks that are on the wall. And Melaine, the expert, realizes that they're out of place. And if they follow the order of the vinyl, that should be the riddle to this first room. So they move the mask around, and sure enough, the safe in the wall opens up, and they're one step closer to completing the room. After this, Tyler, he goes over and takes one of the masks off the wall and puts it on his face and starts looking around. And when he looks down at his arm, he sees like bugs and shit crawling under his arm. And he's like, what the fuck is this, you know? And then he looks over at his girlfriend and sees a shadow person lunging towards her. And so he calls out. He's like, Melaine, watch out. And of course, they all look at him like, what the fuck are you doing, dude? And then he has to play it off like, oh, yeah, sorry, you know, I thought I saw something or whatever. And they're like, all right, you know, weird. And Melaine immediately goes around being like, he does this all the time. He gets scared and shit. And I gotta say, like, Tyler earlier, they showed it, and he was just constantly on his phone, and he wouldn't pay attention to his girlfriend and stuff. He was a dick and stuff. But Melaine in this movie is not the nicest person to Tyler back. Like, he starts freaking out later, and she's like, you do this all the time, and you know, you always come in here, and then this happens. And it's like, yeah, clearly he's told you multiple times throughout this movie alone, he doesn't like creepy stuff like this. but he knows you do, and so he's going because of you. Like, he's trying to be with you. But anyway, that's besides the point. Also, apparently after that shadow person attack happens, it cuts to black for the first time. That's the first time I ever written down in my notes, like, what the fuck was that? Eventually they realize that if they take this ultraviolet light that's in the room and they shine it on the masks, each mask has a number, so they get the code off of it to unlock the safe, and they get their first key to move on to a different room in the house. As they're leaving, the daughter almost puts on the mask to look in it, but Andrew stops her from doing it, and I was like, very interesting. It's almost like he knew, and that plays a part in the movie. Is like they keep throwing in, like, ooh, maybe Andrew, maybe he's in it. Why is he here all alone and shit, So the next room starts, and apparently it only took them 10 minutes in that other room. I don't know if you go back and watch the movie, if they have it timed to 10 minutes, like legit. But later on in the movie, there's a part where they look at the clock and it's 38 minutes, and about 15 minutes in the movie passes, and they look again and there's 35 minutes. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. And to be fair, there is a lot of weird, like, time loop stuff in this movie that I wasn't expecting. A lot of, like, it reminded me of Triangle a little bit, way back when we watched Triangle. But so maybe, like, the time loop, I know definitely the time loop plays a factor later when we see the clock, but there's other parts where I'm not sure if it's the time loop or the movie just being dumb, and they didn't realize that, hey, maybe it looks stupid if 20 minutes go by and only 3 minutes in the movie, clock goes by. Either way, this room has a telephone in the middle of the room that's hooked up to a radio, or the radio just might be by itself, actually. But there's a telephone, there's a radio, there's a device that, it's like, the toy as a kid where you put your hand in it and the beads or whatever press in, and you can see, like, the imprint of your hand on the other side. It's that, but it's on two different sides, and when you press your hand in one, the other side lifts up. And this just plays more into, they start figuring out more, like, oh, this is how the inventor tried to communicate with the dead. You could press over here and it would pop up over here, and the phone is connected to try to talk to the dead, and all that stuff. Mullane eventually picks up the phone to see if it works, and it starts ringing, and she's like, oh shit, it's ringing, and someone answers, and at first it's just her voice, like, played back to her. She's like, hello, and it's like, hello, and it keeps and she's like, clever, they just record your voice and play it back. But then the voice starts to say different stuff than her, and it starts talking about, oh, Tyler's there right now, isn't he? Put him on the phone. Put him on the phone. And so the lady's like, all right. And so she calls Tyler over, and Tyler does not look pleased to go over and talk to the ghost lady on the phone. But eventually he gets over there and he picks up the phone, and the voice on the other end starts yelling to him that she's so sorry, and he needs to run, and he needs to get away, and, don't look back. And in the middle of it, there's like a screeching sound in his ear, and he pulls the phone back, and on the phone is like his severed ear with maggots and stuff crawling all around it, and he freaks out. But then he looks back, and there is no ear there, but his ear is like bleeding. But I think they might have mentioned that, like, it was just part of the gag, like, on the phone it puts blood out onto you, but I'm not sure if that's what happened or if his ear was just bleeding, But either way, this is enough for him to be like, I'm fucking out of here. So he yells the safe word, which is awake. If you yell awake, Josie told him that would, take you out of the game. So he yells awake. The door opens up just enough for him to slide out, but it slams shut before anyone else can follow, and it is locked. So that is it. Tyler is gone from the game. This is when his girlfriend starts talking about, yeah, he's always a bitch like this and doing this, and I got upset, and I was like, yeah, well, he's just doing it because of you. He doesn't want to. But anyway, whatever. They go, after that, they're like, all right, I guess we go back to playing the game. So they go back to looking for clues. Karen talks to Andrew, and she asks him why he's here alone. And this time he tells her that his shrink told him that, you know, he needs to work on character building and spend time with more people. And he asks her how he's doing, and she looks back at her dad, and she's like, not very good, you know? And he's like, oh, shit, I thought I was doing all right. Eventually, they realize that the clock in the room is broken, and it's been stuck on a certain time. And then they realize that it's stuck on 10:12. So they go over to the radio, and they turn the radio frequency to 101.2. And on the radio frequency, it gives them a bunch of letters to type down on this typewriter that's also there. And when they type it all out, it says 5 lost after midnight, I think. Or just 5 after midnight, something like that. So they go over to the clock, and they move it to 5 after midnight. And that opens up a thing in the clock that gives them a key. And they get out of that room, and they're on to the next stage. The next stage is apparently just a closet in the middle of the hallway. And the daughter's like, oh, well, there's got to be something in here. And they're like, I don't know. So she's digging around looking for something. And out of the bottom of the closet, a hand jumps up and grasps her. And they look, and it ends up being Josie, who's in the closet. And she's in bad shape. She's been stabbed. She tells them all that the inventor is here. And he's in the house. And they need to find the master key to get out. And then the door slams shut, and that's it. So Andrew, Karen, and Michael, the dad, all believe that was real. But Melaine is like, oh, you guys are so gullible. You know, this is just, you know, that's just part of the game and stuff. So she doesn't believe any of this stuff that's happening. The dad is like, listen, this is too much for me. I'm out of here. So he starts to yell awake, but no one comes to get him out. And so they're like, what? So we're just stuck in here? What happened to the safe word, you know? They decide that their only way to get out of here must be to just keep playing the game. And since the closet was the only room that they could open, they must not be supposed to go into a door right now. So instead, they look up to this little window that leads out into a hallway. And they're like, that must be the key to the next place. So they lift up Karen, because she's the only one that can fit through the window, and they send her out. And when she gets on the other side, it ends up just being another hallway with more locked doors, and there's windows with bars on them and shit. Eventually, she looks out one of the windows, and classic, you know, a hand smacks up against the window and scares her. And then someone who looks like Josie goes walking by at the end of the hall and is like, hey, over here, follow me, you know, and whispering. And of course she's like, sure, I'm coming, because she thinks that this is really Josie, and, you know, it was all part of the game earlier when she got stabbed, and she's like, oh, this must, you know, Josie will, you know, I'll tell Josie that we don't want to play anymore, you know. So she leaves to follow Josie. Josie then literally leads her into the sketchiest looking place in this whole mansion, in this like basement room. There's a shot that almost looked like the basement in Barbarian when she first opens up the door and looks down at it. But the basement ends up leading into a morgue. Yeah, I guess you could call that like a morgue room. And when she goes in that room, the door behind her slams shut, but at the same time, it unlocks the door for everyone else. So everyone else is able to leave that room. Karen looks around this morgue area she's in, and she ends up finding like a bunch of shit about the inventor and his experiments, and she finds a piece of paper on like an autopsy report. And she looks in like the sink, and she finds what I thought was a key, but it ends up just being like an earring, I guess. But either way, there's a door open, so she goes to leave out of the door, but it's almost like a ghost bumps into her or something. Like she stops in the middle of walking, and she looks, and all of a sudden, I don't know the actual term for it. What do you call it? It's the you know, it's like the metal bed sheet pan thing that they roll out of the wall that's in the cooler that they push the dead bodies in. That, you know, everyone knows what I'm talking about. That's open and there's a dead body laying on it. And she pulls back the sheet, and sure enough, it's like a decaying dude. And so she like starts screaming and shit, and we cut away to black. When it comes back up, there's a shot of Karen, who's so scared she started crying at this point. But I swear to God, it's like they just took a little dipper thing and just dropped like 4 beads of water on her cheek. Like, it looks like she could not really cry, and they just dropped water on her cheek or whatever. I'll try to remember to put it in here, but my time frame on editing this podcast is a little short because I got stuck working an extra day. So, you know, hopefully I'll remember to take a screen, or, you know, I'll remember to put it in here. If not, hey, go watch the movie. You'll see what I'm talking about. Something starts breaking or banging on the door outside of the room. So Karen decides to hide in the metal bedsheet pan thing. And she goes in, locks herself in, just before whatever this thing is busts into the room. We cut back over to the other 3 people who wind up in this room where all these random sheets are hanging from, like, you know, just from the ceiling. They're just hanging around in the room. This is when the girl looks up at the clock and sees that 35 minutes is how much time they have left. And in reality, it had been like 15 minutes since they last looked at it, you know. We go back to Karen, who's still hiding in her little dead person refrigerator. And she's trying not to make a sound because the guy's banging around outside. But then she looks over at the dead guy who's next to her, and all of a sudden his head starts peeking out from the sheet, and his hand starts moving towards her. And she doesn't know if this is all real or if it's a hallucination. So she's just trying to stay as quiet as she can, you know, as this thing is reaching towards her. And we cut to black once again. When we come back, we go over to the other group of people who they figure out that there's just numbers on the ceiling fan above them. And that gives them the combinations to this desk to open it up and get this key. They go and they open up the door and they're going to leave, but as they go to leave, Melaine notices that on the projector that's been playing a video in this room they're in, she sees herself in the room running away. And she's like, what the fuck is that? And then on cue, the door slams shut and she's locked in the room now. And she's like, this is crazy. And so then she goes to leave the room, and as she walks out of frame into the door in the front, she comes back in through the door in the back of the frame. And it was really cool. It caught me off guard. Unfortunately, they then ran it into the ground because they showed the exact same thing 8 or 9 times, legit, of her running through the door and coming out the back. And it was like, yeah, we get it. Like, she didn't try anything different either time. She just kept running through the door. And eventually, you know, she realizes, you know, this isn't going to do anything. So she just goes further into the room itself, and she hears a phone ringing. And as soon as she heard the phone ringing, I was like, oh, I know where this is going to go, you know? So as she goes towards the phone, we discover Tyler, who is hanging in the room. He is dead. Someone has killed him, or he's killed himself. Either way, he's hanging here. And she starts crying, and then she answers the phone, and it's, you know, herself. And so it's her talking to her past self. And the whole thing of Tyler, I'm so sorry, you need to run, all plays out again. And that's what that was all about. I feel like we've seen that a couple times on here. I think Triangle, there was that of people like talking on the radio to themselves and shit. I want to say As Above, So Below had something like that, where there was a phone down there that ended up being like them talking to themselves or something. But yeah, that's popped up a couple times. It's always fun though when like you're talking to your past self, you know. they go, or after that, we go outside. And the dad now is convinced that Andrew is a part of whatever's going on in here. So he like slams him up against the wall and he's like, something's fishy is going on with you. You tell me what the fuck you're doing here by yourself. Do you know what's going on? And the dude's like, bro, get off of me, dude. And just walks away. And that was the end of that confrontation. We go down into the morgue with the daughter and something's banging towards her little refrigerator door. And it opens it up and pulls her out, and it ends up being Andrew who pulls her out, and she's like, oh, thank God. But then immediately she starts to be like, well, hey, where is my dad? How did you know exactly where I was? And finally she starts acting smart too, and she's like questioning, you know, how Andrew knew all this stuff. And he's like, we split up to look for you, which that's not true. They just had a fight, but you know, whatever. And, you know, I heard you screaming down here, so I came to help. And she's still not 100%, but she's like, whatever, we gotta get out of this place. We go back to the lady who's stuck in the sheet room, and fucking a bunch of shadow people start trying to attack her. You see them, like, you know, on the sheets. And this is what I meant by the acting gets really bad at some point. Her acting is not great here. She goes, what do you want from me? What do you want? And she's trying to like run away, and eventually she starts climbing this ladder. I don't know where it was going to lead to, but she starts climbing this ladder, and one of the shadow people, I guess, breaks it in the middle. So then she falls back and lands on like this jar of pencils, and one of the pencils goes through the back of her head and out of her eye, and now Elaine is dead. After that, we go over to the dad, who I saw a comment on one of the reviews I read that was like, have a drinking game every time this guy says Karen. It legit is like Heavy Rain, the what was the kid's name, Michael or something, and he just keeps, you know, Sean, isn't that it, like Sean, and he just keeps calling. Legit, this dude just stumbles. He just stumbles around, go Karen, and he just is like, he almost looks like Jack Torrance at one point, but like way lamer and just real dumb, just running around yelling Karen. And so he's in the middle of one of his Karen, you know, yelling Karen, and he turns a corner and he finds this painting of a tree next to like a lake or a stream and green grass and stuff, and he stares at that painting, and then it starts to like shake on the wall, and then the wall just falls over, and all of a sudden he's there in the painting that was on the wall, and he's like, oh shit, and he's looking around, he's like, this is crazy. And then he looks back over to the water, and there is just the top half of a girl's head poking out of the water with like only her eyes and the forehead and everything, and it legit is a very creepy shot. And then of course the lady like slowly walks out of the water, and she comes over to the dad, and she starts nibbling on his neck and shit, you know. And then all of a sudden he sees a giant gear has appeared in the middle of the lake, and then he looks and he sees that chains have been tied around his arms, and now they're going around his neck, and he's being pulled in by the gear into the stream. But he manages finally to like fight back, and he falls back and falls literally back into the mansion. And when he gets back up and looks at the painting, he sees the girl in the painting now like staring back at him and shit. As he's walking away, I forgot to mention, when he went up to the painting, he was following what I thought was like blood footprints, but it ended up being like muddy footprints, I think. Because then when he's leaving, he realizes that he's leaving behind muddy footprints. And that's really the first time well, not, I guess, because the lady talked to herself in the past, but you realize that like, oh, he's following his own footsteps, you know? So we go back over to the daughter and the dude, and they find a fucking map that shows them that apparently the key that they need is hidden in the toilet. And there's this whole, you know, scene where it's all nasty and it looks like shit. So Andrew sticks his hand in there. and he finds a severed hand, and he's like, oh God, you know, and he pulls his hand back up. I always love, because he sticks his hand in there and then he pulls it back up and his hand is completely clean. And it's clearly like they just put like nasty looking dye in this water in this toilet instead of like coming back up and having shit and stuff all over your hand. So he's like, that was wild. So then since he did it the one time, the daughter's like, well, I'll do it the next time because I don't want you to, you know. So she reaches her hand in there, and this time she ends up finding the key that they need, that gets them out of the fucking the room. Apparently their escape out of the room though is literally like through the vents, because they just end up like crawling through the vents. As they left, I couldn't help but notice that Andrew was like, oh, you go ahead, I'll follow. And I was like, this dude's just trying to stare at some like 16-year-old ass. What's going on here? As they're walking through or crawling through the vent, this is when we cut back to the dad who's just losing his shit, yelling Karen, and it's just fucking ridiculous. As they're crawling through the vents, Andrew gets grabbed and he gets drug away. The dad hears the daughter screaming, so he goes running over to where he hears the screams coming from, and it leads him back into the room with the sheets, and he finds Tyler, who's, you know, hanging there dead. The daughter comes out of one of the vents and ends up next to Melane's dead body, so she sees that, and then the dad meets her over there, and so he sees her dead as well. They're like, alright, so this shit's definitely real, you know? They're stuck back in the room, so they stop the fan again, and the dad pulls out a different key this time and gets them out of the room. And this is when they realize that like they're following their own footsteps, and they're in like this giant time loop, and we see like the clock is messed up, like it'll be on 0 and then it'll go back to 45 minutes, you know, or whatever. So they go in the next room and they end up in the room where Tyler came out when he left the game, when he went out the door and no one saw him again. And they see Tyler again and they're like, oh, we're following behind the group, you know? The daughter comes up with this theory that this whole place is just an echo of stuff that's already happened. So they come up with this plan to get back to Josie and ask her what's going on when she's in the closet, you know? And it clicked for me. It did make sense because Josie was like, why do you guys seem so confused to see me earlier? And it's like, because she's talked to these people so much, like she knows them, you know? So they go through the puzzles again and they blaze through them this time because they know all the answers. They get back to Josie, who's still dead in the closet. And this is when the daughter realizes that the autopsy report she read earlier talked about someone who died with this exact same wound. So the dad gets the idea to go full Saul again, just like the toilet earlier. And he's like, the key must be inside of her stomach. So he reaches into her stomach, and sure enough, he finds the key. Once he finds it, they hear something running up towards them with chains and shit. So they go running away. The lights start flickering. There's shadow people on the walls and stuff. And they end up running through a door, and they come out into the bathroom that was in the diner earlier on in the movie. And they hear someone coming, and they hide in the stall, and in walks the daughter. And so that noise that the daughter heard earlier was them in the stall, like making noise. In here, the dad sees her like with the necklace out and shit, and he's like, oh, you know. And then they make the noise, and the daughter starts to like come towards the stall, and they legit just play out that whole scene again, and they cut to black as if to build more tension, even though we've already watched this. Like, we know what's happening here, you know? So it comes back from the commercial. The Betsy gets done taking her shit. She comes out of the stall. But then we get a director's cut, and we see that, in fact, the daughter did put on that necklace, and she's had it under her sweater the whole time. I wrote down, I was like, they should pull a Rick and Morty and just, like, kill their past selves and just slide into that life, you know? Also, that's a very timely reference with everything that's going on with Justin Roiland right now. I gotta tell you, after years of everyone watching that show and me not watching it, and then finally watching it and going, all right, I can be somewhat of a fan. This was, all right. And then literally maybe 2 weeks after I get done watching the show, all this stuff starts coming out. I was like, come on, man. Like, you got to be kidding me. That's just terrible timing on my part. So they walk out of the bathroom and they're back in the diner and stuff. And they walk outside and their car is there. And someone's left a note that says it was easy to fix. You don't have to pay me or whatever. And they just get in the car and they're like, all right, we're going to leave now. But the note said the key is in the glove box. And when they look at the glove box, there is a padlock on the box. And then they notice that this whole thing is still just part of the game. And the ignition switch is also like a key that you would find in the mansion. And we go inside of the ignition and we come out at the mansion and we get a bunch of shots of just the escape room mansion again. And then that's the end of the movie. Yeah. So I get, yeah, sure, whatever. They never explain. I guess Andrew must be dead. I still myself kind of believe that he is the inventor, and that's why he kind of knew. I don't know. I just had this weird feeling about him, and that was you never see the inventor. There's never a final showdown. There's never like his ghost, or anything like that. Besides, I guess the shadow people, maybe they were supposed to be the inventor. I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, you never know what happens to Andrew. The inventor never shows up. It just kind of ends. It's like Always Sunny, the Charlie rules the world. It doesn't have to be elaborate. Some things just kind of end. And then, that's it. But yeah, there you go. That's the end of No Escape Room. I guess No Escape was taken because No Escape Room is kind of a shitty name. But whatever. This movie had literally no facts. If you go on IMDb, it was like, be the first one to have, say something about this movie. No one's talking about it. So, and I couldn't find a budget or anything. So that's about it for No Escape Room. Like I said, it's on Netflix if you want to go watch it. It was fine, I guess. The ending really sucked. Yeah. So there you go. Best of, worst of for No Escape Room. My best of is gonna be the sequence with the lady in the lake and coming out in the chains and all that. Specifically though, the first shot of her with her whole body like submerged and just the top of her head sticking out. It was really creepy. Yeah, so that'll be my best of. Worst of, I might say just the fucking the Mullane, and when she's running away from the shadow people going into her death and stuff. It was really bad. Yeah, there's not a lot more I can say about it. That's basically it. And that's basically, yeah, I don't have much more to say about this movie. That's it. That's the end of No Escape Room. Thanks for listening. Like I said, hopefully, I don't know what this edit's gonna look like right now because my time frame is all trying to keep that still never miss the Friday episode. So hopefully, we'll keep that up. Next week, who knows? Maybe Child's Play. Maybe we'll finish it. The Child's Play remake. I'm gonna pressure Tyler really hard into getting it done. If not, it'll be something else. I just want to get it done. So firstly, we can finish that series, and then I can go on to watching the second season of the show. And secondly, just so I don't have to keep every week going, sorry about the movie we were supposed to watch. I'm watching the wagon, But anyway, so hopefully next week, Child's Play. But if not, I'll bring you something. There'll be something here. Go check out the gaming channel. Shit's coming out over there all the time. I don't know what will be out next tomorrow. If you're watching this when it comes out, tomorrow is another Red Dead I think part 6, which it'll be the end of Arthur's story, and then eventually, part 7 will be the epilogue. So yeah, go check that out if you haven't. Also, another episode of the Madden thing I'm doing will be over there. If you just, throw that on the background or something, But anyway, yeah, thanks for watching. See you guys next week. Hopefully Child's Play. And, yeah, bye.